Introduction to Classical Tibetan, Lesson 7-2, Verbal Uses of Particles. So far, we've talked about particles within sentences, but sometimes particles can occur between sentences as well. Sometimes we can find particles placed after the main verb in a sentence. This serves to link sentences together. When we find sentences linked together, we have to read each of the sentences individually before we connect them. Our textbook covers the 9 main usages of these kinds of particles. We'll just focus on the first 3 today: the connective particle, the concessive particle, and the agentive or the instrumental particle. Remember that the connective particles ki, gi, I, and yi can be used to show the relationship between 2 nouns or an adjective and a noun within a sentence. When placed between sentences, however, the meaning gets translated as but, however, even though, and so on. In other words, these particles can be thought of as indicating a contradiction between sentences. Tsik she ki dun mi go. This is actually 2 shorter sentences linked together by a connective particle. Tsik she means one knows the words. Dun mi go means one does not understand the meaning. If we translate the connector particle ki as but or although, we can read this longer phrase as one knows the words, but one doesn't understand the meaning. Or although one knows the words, one doesn't understand the meaning. Let's try a longer phrase. Dini sangi ki mi sun ki kepa di sung so. First, let's look for the verbs in the sentence. There's the final verb all the way at the end, sung, and we can see masung in the middle of the phrase, right before the connector particle. This is the final verb of the first phrase, so let's start here. Sung means spoken or said, so masung means not spoken or not said. Immediately to the left, we have an agentive particle connecting masung to the agent of the speech, sange. And to the left of that, we see the emphatic ni particle signifying the subject of the sentence, which is simply di. So what does this first sentence say? This was not said by the Buddha. Then we have the connector particle connecting this phrase to the next one. Let's again start with the final verb, sung. To the left of that, we see an agentive particle linking the verb to the agent, kepa di, this scholar. So this phrase reads, said by this scholar. Notice that there's no subject in this phrase, but when we read it together with the phrase that came before it, connected by the ki particle, we can see that the subject di ni applies to both phrases. So we can say that the subject gets distributed over the connector particle and can be applied to both phrases. This is an extremely common practice in Tibetan. So putting everything together, we can say, this was not said by the Buddha, but it was said by the scholar. When the concessive particles kyang, yang, and ang are found between sentences, they similarly indicate a contradiction, translated as but, however, although, and so on. These particles are usually used to indicate that whatever happened in the first sentence isn't sufficient for the next sentence to happen. For example, kong ni sangye ki tempa mangpo tu kyang nyomong pangwar manu so. So let's start with the verb right before the kyang, to, which means here. Working right to left, we come to mangpo, many. Many what? Tempa, many teachings. Someone hears many teachings. Now there's a connector particle here connecting tempa to sangye. So this means many teachings of the Buddha. Then we see a ni particle marking kong as the subject. So this sentence reads, he hears or he heard many teachings of the Buddha. Then there's the concessive particle kyang. Now let's look at the second sentence. Starting with the final verb, we see the auxiliary verb nu negated by ma, so this means unable. Unable to do what? Pangwar manu, unable to abandon. Remember that the auxiliary verb is joined to the infinitive form of a verb with a ladun particle, in this case, ra affixed to the ba. Okay, so unable to abandon what? Nyonmong, afflictive emotions. Unable to abandon afflictive emotions. Again, notice that the subject is omitted in this second sentence because it was already mentioned in the first sentence, and it can be distributed over the kyang. So, putting all of this together, we have, although he heard many teachings of the Buddha, he was unable to abandon afflictive emotions. The last type of particle that we'll talk about today is the agentive particle. When this particle is placed after the final verb of a sentence, it indicates the reason for the following sentence. It's usually translated as because or since. For example, Kong ni lelo yimpe lame damngak la minyen. Here, the agentive particle is attached to the infinitive form of the verb yin, making it yinpe. So the first sentence, Kong ni lelo yin, is a simple subject-predicate yin sentence. He is lazy, lelo. The second sentence is Lame damngak la minyen. Starting with the final verb, we have minyen, does not listen. Does not listen to what? Damngak, oral instructions. Notice that these two words are connected with the ladun particle. Moving to the left, we have a connector particle connecting damngak to lama. So this means the oral instructions of the lama. So this last sentence altogether reads, he doesn't listen to the lama's oral instructions. Putting the two sentences together, we get, since he is lazy, he doesn't listen to the lama's oral instructions. There are more verbal uses of particles, but this is all that we'll cover for today. To review, the connective particle indicates a contradiction between sentences. The concessive particle also indicates a contradiction, but is usually used to show that the action of the first sentence is insufficient to carry out the action in the second sentence. Finally, the agentive particle indicates reason and can be translated as since or because.